Hello and good evening, everybody. Cam K back with you for another episode. It's episode 29 of the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour here on G-Force TV. Things have been a little bit quiet around the NASCAR Pinty Series as of late, so a little bit different of an episode today. We're talking around a series that has a good connection with the NASCAR Pinty Series that maybe everybody doesn't remember, but we're going to go and talk about it, and we'll talk about their season that they're going to have. Obviously, I'm involved with this series, so it's a great idea, I think, to bring them up and talk about their upcoming 2023 schedule. And again, not too much on the NASCAR Pinty Series side. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Caitlin Patrick out on the David Starr podcast and talking all about the NASCAR Pinty Series, answering all sorts of questions, repping the series. She did a great job talking about us and about how the series is and explaining NASCAR in Canada to the American fans. And it's a really, really cool experience to hear her out on there. And then tomorrow's episode of the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, we'll be chatting about our year in review, talk about our own pluses and minuses that we had throughout the season, and what we can look forward to for 2023. We don't expect the schedule is going to be released this week. They're still waiting on confirmations for paperwork, just to make sure that dots are dotted, T's are crossed, to make sure that we have everything set in stone. And as you may have heard Tony Spiteri on this program last week mention, that the idea is to have the schedule for 2024 out in the summer of 2023. So they're actually working double time right now to try and get two schedules essentially put together, 2023 and 2024. But right now, it would appear that we're probably looking around 14 to 15 races, which is an increase from last year. There's not been any mention of a departure of a track for 2023. So as of right now, everybody is still in play. We do know Granby, Autodrome Granby, another dirt race, is expected to be on the schedule. Quebec Press did mention that a couple months ago, actually confirming that was going to happen. Where we go from there, obviously, is interesting. I think Tony kind of led us to believe that possibly some other racetracks are going to be on board for 2023 and maybe beyond. We already know of a good amount of those tracks that are going to be participating in the 2023 season. It's just about figuring out when they are going to appear on the schedule. I think we can expect, and we know for sure, Weekend is going to be 2 days. It's going to be the August 14th and 15th, which was confirmed on the G-Force Race Rivals Race Chat program with Clinton Jeffrey confirming 14th and 15th for next year. And then we already have our Eastbound Park confirmed to be back for next year. Obviously, we talked about Weekend, Granby confirmed. Edmonton is already confirmed for 2023. Caitlin and Todd on Racing It Out confirming that CTMP is likely back with its two races. We've heard some confirmations that Sunset Speedway will be back. We already have confirmation iCar is back. Belief is Chaudier is back. So there's just a couple of questions regarding certain racetracks that maybe we're just need a little bit more confirmation. Right now, I guess the only one that would be open to whether or not it is going to be back is Toronto. I can't see that that's not going to happen with the success that it had last year, but you never know. If they're going to make a big go of this schedule for this year, perhaps one of those places is going to be off of it. Maybe we get a second race at Delaware Speedway. Gary Calling in the chat last week throwing that out as a possibility. Like maybe that could happen. As far as I know, no other Ontario races we expect. No Peterborough, no Flamborough, no Sauble Speedway. Just that's what we're going to expect. Owl, what's going on, buddy? So, in fact, tonight we're going to be talking about another series. We've talked about the APC series and their schedule. We talked about Oscar previously when their schedules came out. So now we're going to talk about a series that's actually a little bit closer to my heart because I do work for them. And they have a history with the NASCAR Pinty Series that maybe not a lot of people know. And you've got to go back to the NASCAR days. And for a long period of time, the NASCAR Super Series had a companion to series with it, known as the NASCAR Sportsman Series. And now, when I started watching NASCAR back in 2004, 2005, it was known as the Power Water Series, and just basically had a companion event. The Pinty's Series, as we know, they typically run 200 plus laps on their races around short tracks, and the Sportsman Series ran 100, and they were essentially like the Xfinity Series to the Pinty Series. Now, so when NASCAR came in and bought the NASCAR Series, they didn't take the Sportsman Series as well, meaning that IP was available. So it was decided that it was going to keep running under its own name. And since 2007, this series has been chugging along. It's had its moments of struggles. It's definitely not in the same position that it may have been 15 to 20 years ago. But definitely we're going to get into a little bit about that series tonight. Jim says, so this weekend will be qualifying day and the next day Consi and race day again. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, Jim. Just a little too rushed, I think, this year. So I think 2 days is a little bit better for them. It might be a little bit tougher sell because you got Monday and Tuesday for people that have to book off to be able to watch it. So that is a little bit tougher, but again, I think that that's kind of the way to go about it. But one thing that we're going to talk about again in this with the Ontario Sportsman Series is a lot of names that are actually from NASCAR, and they've stuck around. And one of the things that happened when NASCAR came in and bought the series in 2007, then when they didn't take the Sportsman Series, the costs skyrocketed. So there was a lot of names that maybe would have had the opportunity to appear in the Pinty Series if costs weren't so extreme, and that is still a fact to this day. The talent is not an issue. The talent is there. It's just a matter of funding, and also the fact that a lot of these guys and gals that are in this series maybe don't have the means to be able to travel all across Canada to race, again, due to budgetary reasons, or that they want to stay close to home. And I think that as a hub for racing, with regards to especially with regards to the NASCAR Pinty Series, yes, a large majority of the series is from Quebec. A lot of funding, drivers come from Quebec, but the hub of where the cars are, most of them are coming from Bacall and Whitey, and you've got two guys based on Ontario. You've got big teams like DJK, 22 Racing, White Motorsports, and of course EHR, all based in Ontario, that are providing a large majority of the grid. When it comes to the Ontario Sportsman Series, there's not a lot of difference between what you see in a NASCAR Pinty Series race and what you see in an Ontario Sportsman Series race. Sure, there are some differences in terms of the technical side. Definitely, there's some differences, but you can actually get cars that have been in NASCAR, cars that have been in the Pinty Series. In fact, a competitor actually in the Ontario Sportsman Series right now is running ex-DJ Kennington racing equipment. And what's also nice about it is that you can get any body style, as long as it's on the list of approval, you'll run it. And there's a lot more approval in this series than there is in the Pinty Series. Pinty's, you're typically looking at the newer body styles, nothing too old, whereas in the Ontario Sportsman Series, you kind of get stuff from all over. Well, the Ontario Sportsman Series has gone through a bit of a management change over the past couple of seasons. The series director has retired from 2020 and 2021, and a new series director came in 2022, and the same for 2023. A new management, new social media, new everything really in 2022. And it was a little bit crazy out on for track at the tracks this year. There was some troubles with getting cars out, cars finishing, but just like a regular racing series, the action was fantastic. And what we're going to show you now is actually the promo reel, thanks to some amazing people that took footage this past year. We'll have a little bit of a reel to show, and then the release of the schedule. And then we'll talk about the racing schedule right after. So buckle up and let's learn a little. Let's see a little bit more about the 2022 season with the Ontario Sportsman Series, and then look at their race dates for 2023. So, a little bit about the Ontario Sportsman Series that you see there. Unfortunately, the stream that I'm trying to be able to follow along with is not working. So we're a little bit behind in trying to figure out where you guys are actually, what you guys are actually seeing at the current time. Just because that does help in trying to figure out where we're going to do it here. So Owl says, yo, dude, how about you try contacting NASCAR Home Tracks so you can get the contract after 2028? So I'm not sure if you're referring to the OSS, trying to get the contract. We have to remember one thing, is when NASCAR comes in, NASCAR makes a lot of changes. It has to be all up to their standards. And that's just not a reality for a lot of the guys in this series. It's a very small series with not a huge payout. But one of its big things, one of its big attractions is that it is affordable compared to a Pinty series. We're talking triple, quadruple the budget for a single race. I've been told before by people within the series that you can run the entire season in the OSS for less than what it takes to do one race for the NASCAR Pinty Series. And you say, well, why wouldn't anybody want to do that? Well, that's the thing, right? It's hard to get the attention onto a series like this. And I'm not going to turn away the Pinty Series. I absolutely love the Pinty Series. But what I've said before is that there needs to be a good ladder system. And while we have an amazing late model program, what's been told to me several times is that the late models don't really compare. In fact, the reality is that we kind of have two premier series, especially in Ontario. Now, one thing you can say about the Pinty Series is it's Canada-wide. It is not a Ontario only like the OSS series is. Are these the same as late model stock cars in the US, where there is a mix of crate and built engines based on car weight, or spec engines like Pinty's? These are not spec engines. That would be a ridiculous, like, we wouldn't be able to do that in our series, to mandate that people have to have a certain item. Sure, there's certain pieces on the tech side of things that people have to have, but we have to remember that one thing, that it is very, very difficult in racing nowadays to be able to afford it. Now, luckily, I have people within the series, but that have contact with me. So it's Crate Motors, but there are some people that build theirs, and I mean, there's a one guy. I know, actually, we just had him on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, where his dad, he talks about it. His dad, he could build an engine like nobody's business. Owl says you could try targeting the Pinty Series by going to road courses that they would never go to anymore. True, Owl, you could. However, but then the one thing that we run into again is having to have a car for a road course as well. A lot of these guys, they don't have multiple cars. It's one. And so, while I agree with you, I think places like going to, like, say, a Shannonville, definitely would be something that you would want to look at. This series actually did go to dirt last year, and one of the things that we have, and we're lucky to have here, is a partnership with Clydesdale Tires, which allows us to use American Racer tires, so a lot cheaper tires, and they're also 8-inch, right? So it's going to bring a lot more people together on an even playing field. It is very difficult in the Pinty Series to have a tire budget, because those tires are really expensive. General tires are crazy expensive. Just like if you were to get Goodyears. I mean, American Racers, we have guys in this series that last year told me they didn't change tires the whole season. Like, there's people that literally ran on the same tires every week. You've got guys and gals coming in with open trailers. It is such a grassroots stock car series that it is only meant, I think, for road courses, but for short track ovals. One thing I really credit these guys in this series is the amount of accidents is not like what you see in the Pinty Series. A lot of these guys, if they destroy a car, it could be done permanently for them. They don't have the budget to go out and just replace all the pieces off of it. That's a reality. Like we said, budget is so different in this series compared to the Pinty Series, and that's why I think it's such a good stepping stone for younger names. What's nice about the competitors in this series, and this is the key thing here, is the Pinty Series has this as well, is that you have a very solid veteran base, and then you have a younger demographic that's starting to make its way in. I mean, we've seen this in the Pinty Series. You've got the DJ, the Tags, LP Dumoulin, Andrew Ranger, Kevin Lacroix, Larry Jackson. These are names that have been in the series for such a long time. Now all of a sudden you get the Trayton Lapswich, Kyle Steckley, Brandon Watson, Ray Morneau's coming in, and then all of a sudden they're building a core. Well, this series already has a core in it. Some of the names that you've seen, the names that you've seen is they've been in racing. We're talking 30 years, longer than I've been alive. All right. Some of these names what's really good and what's really fun about it is that their names that have been in this series. We have 2 drivers that are celebrating 40 years in motorsports this year, in Mark Patrick and Tim Tolton. You don't just get that, right? It isn't like that. Clint Jeffrey, nice to see you in the chat, Clinton. The American race tire will definitely last a whole season on those cars. They do, and they take care of them. The American racer tires, I don't think we had a couple guys got flats last year, but yeah. So 40 years, we're talking. You have at least 4 names. Plus, you also have race teams that have been around for that long. Now, whether or not they were in that generic form, or in the form that they are now, that's a little bit different. But a perfect name to take, Mike Herniak Sr. has been in NASCAR for forever. And now that second generation is racing. You've got younger guys coming in. But we've got, like, when I started watching the Sportsman Series, these names, Mark Patrick, Chad McGlynn, Doug Cathcart, were in that race that I saw, and they're still racing in this series now. Owl says, no, I didn't think you were bashing short tracks. Don't worry. But I would say in order to expand your schedule, sometimes you might need a road course too. It's absolutely been something that they're thinking of. I mean, you have to. Because one of the things that we've talked about, Owl, is that if you want to build a strong ladder system that's going to eventually filter drivers up to the Pinty Series, you have to have a road course component. That's one of the biggest things that is needed right now in the racing scene. 1,000%, because what happens is that those younger names that are coming in from those that are coming into this series and then trying to go, say, that are coming in from Superstocks or APCs, and then they're going to go for the road course, then all of a sudden they've got no road course experience at all. So that's something that we need to work on, at least in Ontario. I mean, the problem is more or less the crate motors can't really handle the road courses. So it's a tough kind of deal, really. I mean, we're in a really small window we're talking here, right? But I like the idea. I like the idea of going to a place that maybe people can't go to. And right now we kind of are doing that. Jim says, nothing is as expensive as tearing up cars, which is something the sanctioning body needs to keep under control, or you'll run out of cars in most racing series. Absolutely, that's true. Absolutely. It's one of the things that I think we have continuously is, I was in the tower actually at Peterborough Speedway, and we had some guys that made contact, and our race director at the time gave no bones about it. You're going to the back of the pack. You're involved in the caution. And I like that idea. I don't think that, say, let's say, perfect example, Marc-Antoine Cameron spinning Jake Sheridan last year at Delaware Speedway. To me, that should go to the back. Like, you're involved in the caution, just like regular short track racing. I understand, but it's tough. It's definitely tough. They're the same tire we use on the dirt Thunderstocks. Okay, so they will last a long time, Cullen says. Continental's Hoosier and the Pinty's tires are more geared to one race tops on short tracks for performance. Clinton might know a little bit more than I, but I don't even know if they last a full race on the short tracks. I believe they do change tires in most of those races now. Owl says, what road courses would you want for the Ontario Sportsman Series? Well, okay, so here's the thing. We have to remember cost, right? These guys can't afford, they're doing 100-lap races. So if you're going to on a road course, more than likely, you're not going to be doing 51 laps like the Pinty Series. That's just not going to happen. At most, I could see like 10, 15 laps, right? But there's a lot of mechanical side things. I mean, Clinton says here that he goes BS on the crates not handling on the road course. With the right gear, I assume he says you can't hurt a thing. And it could just be something that maybe we don't have the experience in this series to do that. And there might be that gap in knowledge. That's very possible. One of the things that we got to try out last year was dirt. Obviously, in a series like this, it can always be tough. It was a bit of a tough field. DJ Kennington came out and was able to participate in the series and dominated that race. But that's one of the things that I think we want to see is names like we saw Alex Gannett, Sam Fellows have come in the series, run a couple races, try and get some experience. So I think if we can partner up with Pinty's at some point, it does help building some sort of a gap there. And then I've always wanted to see this. I want to see junior teams. I know it's way out there, but if it's just 1, 2, why not? I'd love to see an RGC Sports. When I look at this, I go, okay, there are some names that are in the Pinty series that maybe are inexperienced, or they run at the back and it's just experience level and or equipment. But if you put them in the Ontario Sportsman Series, I think they could get a little bit of confidence, run with some. I mean, we're talking 40-year veterans here that they're running up against. It's not a field of guys that have no talent. That's just not the truth, right? There's definitely some names that you would benefit from. I mean, we've seen it. This is we're talking Chad McGlynn, Sean McGlynn, perfect example. Those two brothers have been in racing forever, and they raced in the NASCAR Super Series, and they have been the most dominant force in the Ontario Sportsman Series. Sean McGlynn is the winningest driver in the series with 22 victories. Okay, there's not a ton of guys that have raced, and it was not 22, it might be 18. I think Steve Robley is 22. So Steve Robley, Sean McGlynn, Chad McGlynn are your top three right now, most winningest drivers. Right now, there's some names that really aren't even close to catching up to those. We had this past year a veteran in Kevin Trevlin who has raced for 30 years in Ontario Motorsports, 30 years in this series, never won. And he went out, got his very first win in, I think he said 35 years of racing. Got his first win at Peterborough Speedway, dominated his first pole that same race, came back, won a back-to-back, won at Delaware Speedway, then almost won the last two races at Flamborough Speedway and won the championship. That doesn't happen. That's the type of stories that I absolutely love about it. So if I'm the series, you know, I'm part of this, I want to see names like a Brian Cathcart, a Larry Jackson, like a DJ Kennington coming in, running a race, bring in JP Bergeron, bring in Pete Shepard, bring in JR Fitzpatrick. You know, these are guys that maybe can't get out and run in the Pinty series on a regular basis up front or running full schedule. So if you all of a sudden have an Ontario presence, and that's, I think, the biggest thing, is building that knowledge that, hey, there's this other series that's here. They run cars that are ancient. But it's a good group of guys, good group of sponsors, partners that are, you know, it's the same. That may not have the investment that they can give to the Pinty series, but they can give it to this series. And it's definitely a work in progress for Ontario racing. I think Shannonville is obviously, for me, one of the places I'd love to see the series go. I'd love to see them go to Grand Bend. I don't really know a lot of tracks that are outside of the Ontario market that they could go to. Back in the day, they went to St. Eustache. There was a sportsman series that went partially in Quebec. So all of a sudden, if we were able to get some real, you know, help, I mean, the series has definitely got so much potential. Although, unfortunately, the second race dates aren't going to work out. I'm not sure what you're referring to. But again, 10 races, 5 tracks across Ontario, so you know where you're going. Remember, we have to remember this is expensive to race in 2023. Let's take a look at the schedule, all right? And this is what I actually think is a really balanced schedule here. Let me just make sure to turn that off. I think you guys still have me, right? Maybe not. Just let me know if you guys can still hear me. Let's just do this. I could just turn that off. That's what I needed to do. You're referring to the schedule. Why are we saying that the second race dates aren't going to work out? Again, just I'm confused what we're talking about. But oh yeah. Okay, so Al, this is actually a really good thing. 3 race dates at Delaware is actually a really good thing, because when you look at what Delaware Speedway has done this past year, they have, and again, you have to remember what is attractive to a racing series, and that's getting on television. Delaware Speedway live broadcasts their events 3 weeks of a year now that we had no live broadcasting. So now all of a sudden you're on Rogers TV London Live, and you have a great weekly attendance. That's the one thing too. You have to remember, Delaware Speedway has had some of the highest turnouts over the past year. And not only that, the finale and the season opener being at the same track. Right now, it is undoubtedly the best performing track, I would think, outside of probably Ohsweken Speedway in terms of just revenue and support. I'd easily take 3 races here, because not only that, the championships, the weekly championships for the Delaware Speedway start that September 15th week, and then the following week is the Fall Brawl. So you could literally have a whole bunch of people that will be there the entire 2 weeks that are literally going to stay. They're going to camp. They're going to have one hell of a time, and they're going to see our championship race there. Not to mention, you're getting the television for your championship race as well. That's huge. You're getting a huge audience. Delaware typically gives you a lot in terms of attention with fans. Lots of partners as well. Our car counts were also really, really good for Delaware Speedway last year. So absolutely, I'm going to say that definitely works out. The change really for this year is a switch. We're going to Sauble Speedway twice this year, and we're not going to be actually going back to Flamborough Speedway this year. Same with Southern Ontario. Just didn't work out for this year, but 2 races for the first time. It's only the second time in series history that we're going to a second race at Sunset Speedway this season. It was a really good race last year, actually. And Full Throttle Speedway, once again, going to get its second race of the season. And Peterborough Speedway, also one heck of a race last year, where Traveling got his very first win. It was chaotic and crazy, but in terms of competitors, I mean, we have some names out there that, again, if you look back throughout the NASCAR years, been a little familiar, but there's some other names that maybe you not know as well. So I really do recommend that we get out and we go to OntarioSportsmanSeries.ca and definitely check it out, because there's opportunities there to find out a little bit more about the series, find out a little bit more about the competitors. And that's one thing that I do want people to remember, is that the names maybe aren't as recognizable as the Pinty series, but there's definitely a lot of character in this series, a lot to grow, a lot to build on. That's the one thing I'd love to see. I'd like to see these guys go to Ohsweken Speedway as well. I think that's if they're going to go to dirt, that's the way to go. Definitely. There's Scott Ferguson says, could OSS race when Pinties are at, we're talking Canadian Tire Motorsports Park? Scott, I would have said yes, but again, we don't have cars set up for that. If they built a makeshift oval, absolutely they would do it. 100%. I think we can go out on a limb and say that if you partner with Oscar, if you partner with Pinty's, if you partner with APC, that's a good move. Because you're going to get crowds that come with it. You're going to have drivers that are also competing that could be interested in renting out a ride. It gets notoriety to the series, which is the biggest thing right now. It is hard. If you don't have television audience, if you don't have people that know about your series ahead of time, it's hard to get people that are going to show up to see just you. We have a year of building here, but there's names that are starting to be interested in coming in and that have come in, that we could definitely benefit seeing. I think a lot of it has to do with funding is what people need, and they need cars, and it's tough. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it is tough to get race cars out there, and then we know that there's a lot of them out there too, out in, like we say, people's barns, in their garages that they haven't brought out in 10 years. And the best thing about it is that with minor tweaks, most of these race cars that raced out there don't really need a ton done to them to be able to get out there. We've got a couple of new faces that are going to be coming back into the series for 2023. We've already had 2 announcements. Corey McAllister is going to be running in the 71. Owl says, I mean, you could try expanding your schedule in 2024, 2025 to include dirt tracks like Ohsweken and road courses like Mont Tremblant and Grand Bend Motorplex. I think Grand Bend and Ohsweken are definitely doable. Owl, I agree with you. Mont Tremblant, actually, we can't even do that with Pinty's because there's, I did ask this and I got some confirmation from my buddy Fritz at 22 Racing. And he confirmed actually that there's noise restrictions at Mont Tremblant, so they're actually not allowed to have any racing at all. Then again, if you're going to have this as a feeder system to this Pinty Series, most of these drivers are going to have a disadvantage on half the Pinty Series schedule if they decide to move up. That's the problem right now, though. Owls, no matter what, there isn't an alternative. You have to go essentially sports car racing is the alternative right now because there isn't a stock car series aside from the Pinty Series that goes out on road courses on a regular basis. You've got karting, iRacing. Sure, those are things that are going to help, but it is definitely going to be a hard sell. But I mean, if there's something where you can have a track that could handle and you can do a couple changes and it can race on a road course, great, absolutely fantastic. It's a hard sell though, and remember, traveling is a big thing as well. Travel costs, again, we're not looking at Pinty Series teams here, and payouts. That's the one thing you got to remember. There's so many things that come out to it. I don't see a 602 or 604 GM crate engine being very happy, on those long straights at a road course like CTMP, and they are limited horsepower engines. Yes, they are. Really made for short tracks, and the trainees are made for ovals. Exactly. So there's a lot of other parts that would affect going to the road courses. So if you look at some of Austin, I'm not sure who this is, Ogonowski's videos, iRacing is essentially off the picture here, meaning you're saying it's not helpful for the road course aspect of it, which I can understand. It's a tough thing, man, because Ontario drivers, especially, just don't have a series that could, and there's not a ton of tracks. You have to remember that too. You basically have CTMP in Ontario and Shannonville, Calabogie. I mean, there's the new FIA track that is being built in Oro-Medonte, but that hasn't actually, I don't think, broken ground yet. So there's not really a ton of places. Whereas in Quebec, there's a lot of great circuits out there. Plus, there's a lot of schools. But I think having names like Daniel Bois, Malcolm Strawn related to the series is actually a really, really good thing because they are driving instructors. They know how to teach. Get a guy like Sam Fellows, perfect example. There's a lot that you can do as well as take the road course drivers and give them an opportunity to be an OSS to learn how to run the small ovals. So there's a lot of options here still. And at the end of the day, you want to be something different and give people an option. Say all of a sudden you have a good sponsor, but they cannot cough up the amount of money to run a Pinty's race, but you could run a full season of OSS instead. Is it better to not run at all, or to at least run in a different series? It's going to be something that's going to be something we're going to have to watch. I mean, the reality is that these small track ovals in Ontario really do need the help of weekly racing. They need touring divisions to be at those racetracks. That's the reality. I think we could say Jacasa would be on the market too. And that'd be a perfect example. Same with Flamborough. If you had the Pinty Series go to any of those, I'd say you pair it with OSS. That's my opinion. I think that Sunset Speedway is another one. Delaware Speedway as well. I think that we're lucky in this series, in this province, to have really some top divisions that compete. I mean, especially when you have the APC Series, Superstock Series. I mean, we've heard countless people say Superstock's easier transition to go from a Superstock to a cup car to a Pinty's car. Add in OSS in there, and then all of a sudden you've got a bit of a ladder there: Superstocks, OSS, Pinty Series, or you go to APC. I mean, the costs that it takes to run on either is absolutely crazy. And I just got a note from somebody involved in OSS, and they would, all caps, would love to be out at Jacasa. Absolutely. And I think we've talked about this on the program before, that Jacasa has that type of pedigree where it could be a big show if all of a sudden you get a big partner to come involved to open up the track and all of a sudden racing's available. I mean, I think that one of the things that we've seen, though, is continuously it's a hard sell. And that's why I wanted to have an episode dedicated at this series, because I want people to know there's other options out there. The more and more that we can get people out and actually competing is better for partners in motorsports. The more and more coverage that we can give is better. I think we know that motorsports in Canada struggles. It is not permanently closed down. Owlet is closed. It has been a long-standing rumor that it's dead and gone. It's not actually. They are still having it open for tests. And actually, the series has history. I mean, we ran at Cayuga for many years. So Jacasa would be a natural step in the right direction. So I don't know how close it really is. I mean, because there's been so many rumors. It's just, as far as I know, it is being maintained still. It is still, it has the option to be functional. I just don't know where, and if they have anybody that can actually fund it to be open. Jim Haynes says, fans and sponsors have to be on board. So you have to go where the money is as far as the tracks. Many tracks are struggling everywhere, so booking in a series is hard if you're just getting by. And that is the truth. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for a series that's small like this without a big-time supporter, and even the little supporters, to have a track say, well, it's worth us to invest in having you bring your show here. When we've talked about it, Jim. We've talked about it. It comes up from the top and it trickles down. There's this mentality out there that you need grassroots to be really strong so that it filters up. I don't think that's how it works. I think you need the top to be really strong, and then that money eventually filters down. Because then all of a sudden, that's where they start to see the grassroots racing, the stuff that maybe doesn't cost as much. It's a tough deal. I mean, for us, a lot of the times the Sportsman Series, it's not one. It's not one partner that makes a race happen. It's multiple partners. That's the mentality that you need to have nowadays. You can't, and I think this is something that we've talked about for a long time when it comes to the motorsports scene, is there used to be the idea that all you needed was a handshake, and then you got your one sponsor for the full season and you're good to go. That is not how it works anymore. We see it. We see it in the Cup Series. When you have names like Jimmy Johnson that can't get a full-time sponsor anymore, that's the reality. It's not a working system anymore. You need multiple partners. And I'll take a perfect example. The Herniak Hall team, I can't even count the amount of companies that they have on their car. I think maybe 13, 14 last year, plus all of the contingency partners for the series, that is the route that you have to take. You just take whatever piece you can get. It's true. Owl says the grassroots is getting expensive. Gas, tires, parts, bodywork. I mean, somebody quoted me, I think it was $3,500 for a set, for a body panel set for a Camaro. $3,500. And I got confirmation, Herniac Hall, 22 different sponsors on their race car. 22. You can't do it with one partner anymore. I'll take a perfect example. You take Robbie Gordon's 31. Okay? One is what we had in 2004. Literally, he's got one safety clean and then a couple of tiny contingencies. One partner. It's just not that way anymore. Businesses want return of investment, but they're not going to give you return of investment right away. They're not going to give you that money that they used to give up front anymore. You don't see it. It is 100% a trouble in motorsports. And like we said, it filters from the top. If you have Formula One teams, which is by far the most expensive form of motorsport in the world, they can't get full-time partners on their cars. Then all of a sudden, it trickles down. Now, where did that attention come from all of a sudden? Where did they start building up their revenue and getting back that return of investment? Netflix. Streaming. God forbid motorsports in Canada gets that support. It is so hard. When you look at all the other sports that racing has to compete against. So that's why giving thanks to Rogers TV London for broadcasting Delaware Speedway. It's TSN. Yeah, sure. It might be online only, or it might be tape delay. You need people that are going to put the product on, no matter how you can get it. Because the return of investment is just, it is hard to get. And companies are not willing to just fork over money. When you look at the reality of merchandise, on how expensive merchandise is, most teams in OSS, in Pinty's even, in Pinty's, don't have merchandise readily available because it's too expensive. Diecast, not readily available. Something as simple as decals, not readily available. There's not even a shop for Pinty Series. All stuff that I know Tony wants to work on. He's vocalized this. We've had this conversation. He has said, I want that fixed. Jim says, people got really mad when Castrol and Ford left John Force, but when the marketing people look at it, it has to be viable. Yes, it does. In the numbers, or they go elsewhere. It's not an easy fix. Cars are under attack. It's true. And you know what? It's going to be even worse, dude. And one of the things that we have found, and we're involved. We're a racing series with OSS. A lot of them have no idea what motorsports is. No idea that car racing is something, first off, that you do in Canada. The ability, you taking people that maybe haven't seen motorsports back where their home is. We had companies that came on board with us and got involved that had never been involved in any sort of motorsports, and helped us out remarkably. Actually, one of our cool initiatives this past year is that every time somebody won a race, they got a SWC clock. Sonal Watches and Clocks was one of our sponsors, and they provided office clocks, like a shop clock, to every person that won a race. How cool is that? But they were never involved. In fact, the last time I checked, The Pinty Series diecasts use Xfinity Series bodies. Yeah, those are the illegal ones. Owl. There's guys that make the illegal ones, or they make the ones on cars that weren't even what they use. I mean, the last legit Pinty Series diecast that was actually made by Lionel was Kevin Lacroix bumper to bumper 74, and it was on a Chevrolet because they don't have a Challenger mold. Kind of crazy when you think about it. I've loved it. I mean, we talked about this. We've had discussions, Owl, with Lionel about Pinty's diecast and the base order. Okay, so the pre-order, you have to have sold 500 before you even place an order. Not an easy thing to do. Now, I thought, what I would love to see is you do a base run of, let's do a 5-car set with LP Dumoulin, DJ Kennington, Marc-Antoine Cameron, Mark Dilley, and Trayton Lapsevich. Just take 5 random names or whatever and do a 5-car 164 set. I think you could probably sell that. Jim says, what I see is you have strong blue-collar jobs. If you have a strong blue-collar job area, the tracks and car counts are going well. White-collar area, not so much. They don't care about cars. It's not even that they don't care, Jim. Is that there's no interest. There's no knowledge. I mean, we talked about this before. Owl, that's what we were thinking about was the 3D printing molds for die casts. It would be expensive, but at the rate that things are going, there you go. And Scott Ferguson makes a great point. This is where G-Force is groundbreaking. It is. And I'd love to get to a point where we can do OSS races on a channel like G-Force. I think it's natural to have that. It's just, it's tough. I mean, right now, you have to consider motorsports is just not on anybody's radar. They don't know. They don't know about it. You have to compete against hockey, basketball, curling, football, soccer, lacrosse, movies, music. Like, just think about all the other things that people would spend money on, right? That people would try out. Cars, what they really do need, and I've said this before, is you need people that have never been exposed to it before. People that come from all different walks of life, and that's what we've seen in the OSS series. Some of our newest partners have come from all different ethnic backgrounds, but they love it because this is cool. They've never seen it before. That's what you need. You need to bring in people from all different walks of life that have maybe never seen race cars. They've never seen people put logos on race cars. This is why Pinty's must keep Toronto to show a white-collar area because of the city of racing. Okay, so Jim, 1,000% I agree with you. I agree. The problem is that the Pinty series is not the focus that weekend. It's the IndyCar series. But what they did right last year, is put it on the Friday, make it free because people will come for a free show. And they did. I actually was just in a store the other day talking with somebody about diecast, and somebody else had a video of the Pinty's cars in Toronto, and he thought they were so cool. Because people don't know that racing exists in Canada. They still don't. Owl says exactly, we need the younger demographic, just don't try to botch it like Drive to Survive series. I'm going to disagree with the Drive to Survive. Only because Drive to Survive has brought in a whole different demographic. Right? Now, it's a lot harder to get people into this type of series because what's the one thing that really works with Drive to Survive is the drama. They ham up the drama a lot. Personalities is what we need to show. It's why having shows like this, like Race Rivals, like Stickers and Scuffs, the Wide World of Motorsports, the True North Racing podcast, getting people to see the personalities, to know the personalities, the people that are involved in motorsports. It's going to get that attention turned their way. It's true. I mean, we've talked about this before. Scott, I want to see the Pinty Series in Yonge and Dundas Square the week of the IndyCar race that has their cars down there. Showing them off, turning the cars up, you know? Yes, isn't they fake a lot of the drama? They do. That's exactly what a reality show is. Being a Friday afternoon is a really good idea because city people may come over and watch and walk in. Well, it's not only that. Jim, I live just outside the city. I take the train and I go because I love it. It's close. That's the other thing too. You have to remember, people aren't going to be filtering out to Delaware Speedway or to Full Throttle if they don't know how to get there, right? If it's not accessible. For myself, a lot of places I have to get a ride to. It's definitely true. I mean, I've said I'd love to see them in the Santa Claus Parade. Again, because you're looking at what can get people's numbers. People look at all the kids are going to be there seeing Santa Claus for the Santa Claus Parade. All of a sudden now you have 4 race cars that are going to show up and kids are going to go, oh my God, a race car. Cool. All of a sudden, if you're driving them down Yonge Street or whatever the route is, you're getting attention because race cars aren't quiet. It's exactly what I'd want to see. I mean, we've heard before, and I've gotten numbers from Tony Spiteri. It's a little crazy when you think about how much people do turn in to watching the Pinty Series. It is ahead of the Xfinity Series in terms of viewership. In terms of aside from the Cup Series, in NASCAR, if I'm not mistaken, it is the highest rated racing aside from the Cup Series on TSN. And they do more than, like, F1's different. That's not NASCAR. But in terms of NASCAR, it beats the Xfinity Series. It's what you need. You need people to get, and that's the one thing too. You have to remember, branding is huge in Formula One. It's all about the team. It's all about what you're going to rep, right? Well, there's not really a ton of that here. So all of a sudden, if you got to rep Herniak Hall Motorsports. Well, what are you repping? Ontario? Most of the series from Ontario. All of a sudden, you start building it up, though. You get somebody like Ray Morneau Jr. with the Windsor area. Windsor represents. Sponsorship is another one. I mean, one of the things that you go back, I mean, how many times do you go back and look at the classic paint jobs that drivers have? It makes it a lot easier to get new fans, because why do you think people fell in love with the M&M's car? It's because they saw it when they were a kid. That's why I fell in love with Don Thompson Jr.'s Home Hardware car, because I knew what Home Hardware was. My dad went there all the time when I was a kid, and it was just a black number 4. I thought it was like the Intimidator. He had the shades on. He had the little goatee. He looked like, to me, the Intimidator. Now, this was after we already saw Dan Shurtleff and the 3 GM Goodwrench car for years. I mean, I wasn't watching NASCAR at that time, but it's possible. That's why we talk about, when we have this show, is we talk about possibilities, and there's a good possibility here. OSS, Pinty's, APC, OSCAR, weekly racing. Definitely along a lot of things we could do to fix. It's about the approach. And I think what we need right now is just to find a formula that works for Canadian motorsports. We don't have a formula right now for approaching companies that seems to work. Sure, you have long-lasting relationships with Leland, with Castrol, with WeatherTech, but it's definitely a lot. John Fletcher, one of the classics. Yes, I'm calling you a classic, John, in the chat. He would know all about NASCAR. He would know about Pinty series. He would know all about this. And it's true. I mean, what we really need to remember is we cannot divide and expect success. It doesn't work. You need everybody working on the same page. And especially in these trying times. We haven't felt, I still don't feel we felt the huge force from the pandemic yet on motorsports. I think it's coming. Inflation will play a role. But the only way that we can continue to have motorsports in Ontario and Canada is to work at it. It's been episode 29 of the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour. We have talked about the Ontario Sportsman Series, about a whole bunch of stuff here. Jim Haynes says, in the last 3 years, a lot of speed parts companies have seen owners retire and sell to holding companies. Oh, it's the sad truth. So you have to change how they are approached. Look at Holly's page. Different companies they own now is staggering. A perfect example, Jim, is Black & Decker. Stanley Black & Decker. Completely destroyed the tool market. They own everything. Everything. DeWalt, I think it's DeWalt, Stanley Black & Decker, Irwin, Craftsman. They're all under the same umbrella. Vice Grip, I believe. They're all under the same thing. So all those individual tool companies that you could have approached 30 years ago are now all under one, and it's corporate structured. So you got to go up 15 people to actually find how to get something sponsored, how to build a partnership. The other thing too with this, Jim, is that a lot of companies don't look at wanting to fill their obligations with motorsports. It's not the hot topic. You've got hockey. You've got curling. People crap on curling a lot. Curling brings in staggering numbers, brings in tons of sponsorship. Pinty's, perfect example, really involved there. Take Scotty's. I think Scotty's would be perfect on a race car here. So hopefully by continuing to expand the market as we do, you'd bring in some of the local flair. But that's the reality, is we're not seeing that. Where the Pinty series, I really think is Pinty's needs global businesses involved. That's what they need. Ontario Sportsman, APC, they need Ontario corporate, specific Ontario businesses, because that's where they're doing their business. If you have companies that are either outside of Ontario or are in another country but are going to start bringing business to another province, then all of a sudden it looks good. Jim says, I don't own a professional style broom in the US. There you go. There's a lot of work involved here, and we know that there's going to be changes coming. If you don't think that Tony Spiteri is going to put his thumb on the Pinty series, you guys don't know Tony. He's definitely going to be trying whatever he can. I mean, he talked about it on our show last week. He said that expect that there's some cool new partners. That's what you want to hear. I think the fact that we don't have reputable, known companies in Canada, like a Canadian Tire, like a Tim Hortons, yes, maybe they're operated by, or at least Tim Hortons is operated by a different party now, but you've got to look at what makes Canada and what makes Canadian brands. I think a perfect example is Coffee Crisp. I've said it before, Nestle Canada on a race car, it's a perfect combination. Something that is uniquely Canadian, which is Coffee Crisp. Not to mention, when you had the A&W car out there, when you had the full throttle energy drink car out there, you had samples given away. You had people that were loving it. Loving it. So we got one more episode for the Pinty's Power Hour. Next week, episode 30. It'll be on Boxing Day. Hope to see you guys there. If you haven't already, please give us a like, thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Of course, you got Race Rivals Race Chat. At the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour, you've got some more content. Definitely go back and watch some of the awesome races that we had live streamed on the channel this past year. And there's definitely going to be a lot more. Maybe you can check out the Ontario Sportsman Series on www.ontariosportsmanseries.ca. So check them out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's going to be it for tonight, folks. We want to see you at the racetrack. I've said it before, dude. Showbiz guy, Dollarama, Dollar Tree, Giant Tiger, all great possibilities. Then you add in those brands that they feature in their stores, 100%. Great combination. There's things that are uniquely Canadian that would work perfect on a race car, especially in OSS, because you've got, like I said, the money is not as big of a hurdle. So definitely go out there and put ourselves to work. But I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Of course, we'll be back on Boxing Day, but all the best to you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back, of course, take you all throughout the off season. We'll get eventually we'll get the 2023 NASCAR Pinty Series schedule out. We'll do a big episode when we get that. We'll hopefully get some more guests on in the off season. But for now, thank you guys for tuning in. Cam K here. Of course, you can follow me on social media, Cam K Racing. Make sure you turn into the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. We'll be doing our season review next on Wednesday. It'll be released at noon. But thank you guys for tuning in. Have yourselves a very Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you all next month.